Welcome to another episode of Upstate Archives. My name is Kristina. I'm a digital producer here at News 10, and each week I sit down with local experts to dig into the Capital Region's fascinating history. This week I am joined by Brian Garreau from Howe Caverns, the cave manager. I guess that makes it pretty obvious what we're going to be talking about today. The famous, beloved Howe Caverns and just that very, very long history from what I understand. Thank you so much for joining us today, Brian.
Thanks for having me, Kristina.
Of course. So just to get us started here, just give us a little introduction. What are Howe Caverns? I mean, I guess it's a little bit self-explanatory about the name. Just give us a little bit of an introduction to what they are if one of our viewers doesn't know.
Okay. So Howe Caverns is a commercial show cavern, which means it's underground. We have lights and walkways and an elevator to get you down into there. But it's a underground area that was carved out from water erosion over millions of years. Water seeping down through the ground and finding a weak spot in the rock where it could get through, and it started to erode everything away over the last 2 to 6 million years.
Wow. Okay. So, I mean, 2 to 6 million years is a long time ago, and I personally don't have much of a reference for, what exactly does that mean? How long ago was that? What animals were around at that time? What did the earth look like around then?
So at the time of the 2 to 6 million year period, it kind of was really crazy with glaciers. So there have been 5 glacial periods in time that we know of. I'm sure there are more than that over the years, but it was more of advancing of glaciers to certain points. And what that meant is you had between a 2,000 foot thick piece of ice to 2 miles thick piece of ice that covered this whole area of the country. So it would advance, and then it would stop, it would start to melt, and it would start to recede back. So there wasn't really a lot of life besides plant life. And then there was a lot of fish, a lot of shells, things like that. But as that advanced, everything would die. And then as it would start to recede back, life would start to grow again, plant life would start to grow again. And then it just kept advancing and receding over that 2 million year period. So it was really a long glacial period.
Absolutely. Wow. That's a long time ago. And you had kind of mentioned this a little bit when you had introduced us to Howe Caverns. How exactly did the caverns form? I mean, what exactly does it mean by erosion? What are all those processes that are at play here?
That's a great question. So a lot of times when you take people down into a cavern, they can't really grasp onto what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So we're walking through a hollow point in the earth, right? At one point throughout time, it was full of rock and clay and sediment. And what happened is water from these glaciers that melted turned into what's called glacial Lake Schoharie around here, which means the whole ridge that goes around all the mountains and the hills that you see was the outside of this big glacial lake. When that lake and the dams broke from that water forced its way down into the ground. So when it came down through the limestone, which is it cracks very, very sharp and very straight. So the water will go in and go down and go in and go down. Mm-hmm. And it found its way to a part where it was very soft rock. The water started to push through, and then as it pushed through, it started to wash it away. So when I get kids in the cavern, I try to explain erosion to them. If you take a bunch of dirt and put some pebbles and stuff inside of it, push it into a big pile, and then take a bucket of water and then slowly pour it over top of it, you can see how it kind of washes it away. Right. That's what happened down there, just over a much bigger and a much stronger force of water over a longer period of time.
Okay, no, that makes sense. I guess the children version is more a little bit better for me to understand.
User-friendly for everybody, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously it's been here for millions of years, but when was the first time that I guess we have record of people really interacting with the caverns and the caves?
So there are a bunch of different legends, and the one thing that I also want to say is there's a lot of caves in this area. It's not just Howe Caverns. There are probably up to 100 separate cave systems in Schoharie County alone.
Wow.
So it's kind of like a big maze of spider web of water going through these tunnels. There were two legends prior to Mr. Howe. One was that the Native Americans of the area had known about it, and they called it Atskaraji, which meant cavern of great galleries. And there was another one that a kind of a peddler had come into the area, kind of a snake oil salesman kind of guy. And his name was Jonathan Schmall, and he had come in the 1770s. And he had mentioned to his local pastor that he found this place to hide because the Native Americans were chasing him. And he had described things inside it that would be the same as the beginning, opening, and mouth of the cavern. The problem was in the 1700s is when the Native Americans talked about Atskaraji. And what that means is Mr. Schmall wasn't hiding very well. And they didn't really hear much about him after the late 1770s. Our explorer, who the cavern is named after, was a man named Lester Howe, and he discovered the cavern May 22nd in 1842. And he was following his cows. He had noticed that on the hot days, instead of staying by the trees where it was cool, they'd go up on this hillside out in the hot sun, and he just couldn't get his head wrapped around it. So he went up and followed them, and when he got close to them, he noticed that there were some bushes that were moving, and he could feel a cool breeze coming through there. And when he moved the bushes apart is when he found the opening to the cavern.
Wow, so it was just a complete accident that he found this. That's really interesting. All right, so how did he, describe the caves early on? Did he, leave any sort of records or any sort of accounts of like what he first saw?
Yeah, there were he kept lots of stories flying over the years. So when Mr. Howe first went in, it was kind of I know they talk about it being a kind of a steep incline that you went down in, but it wasn't really so much steep as it was very wet. There was a lot of clay and smooth rock. So he had a rope that he held onto to lower himself down in and to kind of keep himself stable as he was walking in. But as soon as he got in past the daylight, there's no light at all. So you're in total darkness. So he had to figure out a way to go in there. So he made these little kind of like what you would call like an old time sterno, like a big tin cup with a wick that came out of it filled with whale oil. And he would light that on and put it up on a stick so it would kind of rock back and forth. And he'd hold it up high so he could walk through with his friend Henry Wetzel. And Mr. Wetzel actually owned the property that Mr. Howe found it on. And he went down in there and he just described it as there were a lot of large rooms, there was a lot of water, there were a lot of little holes that went into the side walls, which we call grottos. They're just dead ends that go back into there. But it was an extensive cavern. It went for about 1.5 miles.
Oh, wow. Okay. So he didn't own the land that the caverns were on. Did he end up eventually purchasing that land, or was it sort of a collaboration?
He did. He actually purchased the cavern from Mr. Wetzel for $100.
Wow. I mean, was that expensive then? I mean,
yeah. I mean, you figure back when the first tour started going through, 50 cents was about a week's pay.
Oh, okay.
So that really was, close to a year's wages to buy that. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I wish I could get land today for $100, but on my wages. So when did he decide to turn the caves into a tourist attraction and begin to start giving tours?
So it was about a year later, in 1843, that he had started to bring other people down with him. He had gone through the cavern because there were a lot of areas that were full of like large rocks that were kind of unstable, laying down. So he basically pulled a lot of them aside and he made kind of a small walkway that you could walk through on. Most of the tour was spent in the water because it was just the easiest way to go through. You would walk in leather boots that were covered with oil to kind of keep the water from penetrating the boot, but it wasn't insulated. It was very cold. The boots were smooth bottom, so there was no grit. So anything you walked on was very slippery. and you'd have to climb up some areas of rock and back into the water. And you'd walk from the natural opening to the natural dead end, which is where we start our tours from now. And then you'd turn around and you'd have to go all the way back out. So our tours are about 1.25 miles walking with a 1/4 mile boat ride now. They were about 3 miles back then because you were coming all the way from end to end. His tours cost 50 cents admission. And included with that, he gave you a pair of boots, a jacket, a hat, a torch, and a box lunch. And the reason for the lunch was the tours lasted generally about 8 or 10 hours.
Wow. So that's really a commitment and quite physical as well. So can you give me an idea of, like, you said that the tours today are about 1.5 miles, and then back then they were 3 miles. How do the parts that you explore today, do they cover what they explored then, or is it new areas?
It's all part of the same cave system that Mr. Howe was bringing you through on. There is a section of the cavern that we don't go through. When we get to the end of our boat ride, if you get out of the boat there and start walking, there's another 1/4 mile of cave that's all natural. So there are no more walkways or lights or anything like that. And we do have a separate tour that we run in July and August called the Signature Rock Discovery Tour, which is more of a spelunking tour where you walk in the stream bed, you climb over those rocks and those clay banks that we were talking about, although much easier now because you have a headlight with a nice bright light and you have boots that are waterproof and warmer. So that section of the cavern is still accessible. Back in the somewhere between 1915 and 1925, a cement company who was operating on the other end, which actually owned the natural opening of the cavern, blasted away a large part of the cavern. So there's about an 875-foot section of cave that was destroyed during that mining. There is the natural opening still exists. You can go in about the first 200 feet or so, and then the breakdown from there to the back of the quarry where you can go in and out still today is all that section of the cavern is missing.
Wow, that's really unfortunate. Do we know exactly what it looked like? Would it have been something that we would have been able to incorporate into the tours today had it still been there?
Oh God, yeah.
That's so sad.
Most of the places that you go down there, I think a lot of people, when they think of caves, they think these little tiny things. We have rooms down in the cavern that are 20, 30, 40, 50 feet high, wide sections, narrow sections. So, I mean, you have a little bit of everything, but everything that we do on the tour today is easily accessible by walking just normally, unless you're, a NBA player, and then you have to duck a little bit. But besides that, you're okay.
So, I mean, as you said, these were very physical tours back then, very long, very wet. How popular were they exactly?
Well, in the beginning, it was kind of hard for him to get people interested in it. Remember, you're talking about the 1840s. There were people that definitely wanted to see it because of the unknown, but there were also people that just watched people go into the ground and never come out.
Mm-hmm.
So people were pretty superstitious back there. In the beginning, he did start to get some people coming, and then he started doing other things. The best thing that happened for Mr. Howe was the railroad came in. Mm-hmm. And when the railroad came through, it made it easier for people to come here. So people could easily take a day trip from Albany to Howe's Cave. His cave house that he built was one of the stops on the railroad. So they could stop right there. You could come up. You could get a room for the night there. You could take the tour the next day. He could, get people more interested like that. And he also had a big sell point because he built his hotel right next to the natural entrance where the cool air comes out. He made the air go into the basement. Oh. And then he built these wooden slats that went to each room, and you could pull the slat open and the cool air would go in your room and you could have air conditioning.
Wow. Okay. So
got people to come in.
That's pretty cool. Were there any gases that are from the caverns? No.
There's a lot of people worry about oxygen. Where's the oxygen come from? Well, there's water. There's a stream that runs through the entire cavern that we follow as we're walking through. So the oxygen's brought in through the water. We also have a natural entrance of the cavern where the air blows in. Now that we have an elevator shaft at the other end, it actually frees that air, so there's a much better airflow that goes through there. So you always have good air, but you never had to worry really about any gases and anything like that. Many years ago when they used to mine, they used to have to make sure nobody was in the cavern because of the different types of dynamite they used back in those days, but never anything that just came out of the ground.
Okay, no, that makes sense. And like you said, it became more popular. Were there any points where the caves lost interest that tours began to lapse?
Yes. So a couple of things happened. Mr. Howe had built this big hotel, right? And then he built this big, long building where he could entertain people. And as the popularity started to rise and the want started to rise, he kept expanding. And then somebody had done something in the motel and it actually burnt to the ground.
Oh, wow.
So then a year later, he rebuilt it with his own money and it happened again.
Oh.
So pretty much by 1872, Mr. Howe was nearly bankrupt. He had sold his cavern, his farming, and it was just utilizing all of his time on working on the cavern, but then he had no money or no income. So he actually sold off the cavern to a man named Ramsey. And Mr. Ramsey actually started the first cement company down in the area. So they continued to give tours up until around 1890. Mm-hmm. And then at that time, very few people were coming through. So Mr. Ramsey decided to close it down, go full bore with the mining company. And then the motel, the cave house, he just turned into a motel for the people who worked in the cement company. So pretty much around 1890, there were no tours given through here from then up until 1929 when we reopened to the public as Howe Caverns Incorporated.
Gotcha. Oh, okay. So I know that I was looking through some photos because we've visited Howe Caverns a couple times here at News 10. And I saw in one of the videos that there's this chimney that says, I believe, I can't really read it from here, but
1842 to 1928. So 1842, of course, was when Mr. Howe first discovered the cavern. And 1928 is when the lodge was actually completed. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like a cornerstone. Okay. This tells them when the chimney and the rest of the building was completed. They had almost decided to open it in 1928, but there were some other things that they wanted to finish first, so they held off and didn't open up actually until Memorial Day weekend in 1929.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, I think that's going to be a good time to bring us to our first break. Then we'll come back and we'll start to get a little bit more into the present here. We'll be right back. Thanks for sticking with us. Welcome back to this episode of Upstate Archives. So we've been talking about Howe Caverns, the very long history that it's had. I actually have a few photos here. I have one photo. I was told by the New York State Archives that this is from the 1940s. I mean, wow, look at this. I mean, do you still have that boat?
No. We still have boats, but not that one. We have much better boats now. Most of those were wooden boats, and they only held about, I want to say like 14 or 15 people on them. These boats used to have one boatman in the front and one boatman in the back, as you can see in the picture. And they would push along with sticks off the bottom of the lake, which we still do today.
Wow.
But that's now about halfway down the lake. Yeah.
Wow. No, look at that. That's so cool. And then I have these photos as well. I was told these are from the 1980s or so.
That's what it looks like to me.
I mean, tell us a little bit about, what is this particular? I mean, it looks kind of spooky from the photos, but I mean, what is this here?
So what you're looking at there is the archway right in the vestibule. So that's the first room that you enter into when you get out of the elevator.
Okay.
So the vestibule was the natural dead end to the cavern prior to the elevators being put in. So this is where you would turn around on the early tours and head back out. They put the archway. There are actually a couple of pillars in that room, and there's a cement wall right there as well. So they put those up when they were mining the elevator shaft out, just to give it added stability to make sure that everything was fine when they were doing that. This is where we start all of our tours from, is right here.
Wow. Okay. So, I mean, do you have these boats?
No, those are the boats that I actually, when I first started working here, learned how to push boats on. Those were old steel boats, so they were 1/4-inch sheet steel. Now they are a much thicker and a heavier aluminum boat, so they're bigger. They're about the same weight, but they're much more sturdy. You don't have to worry about them rusting or anything like that. These old boats used to have to pull them out of the lake every year and check the welds all the way around them, and now the boats are much nicer, much easier to maneuver up and down the lake too.
Wow. Okay. So, I mean, like you said,
That's the winding way.
the winding way. Okay. So tell us
Probably my favorite part. Yeah.
really? Okay. So tell us a little bit about how the caves have changed since these photos. I mean, you said you've been here for a while.
Mhm.
Yeah, tell us how you've seen the caverns change and how you've seen the tour experience change.
So geologically, not much.
Hmm.
The calcite in this area of the country takes between 80 and 100 years for a cubic inch to form.
Wow.
So you don't really notice many differences, although I can tell you from when I first started here to now, there are a couple of areas where I can tell you, wow, that's grown quite a bit, or this wasn't here when I first started here.
Wow.
Most of the things down there, you want them to stay exactly the way they are. You're taking, we do about 100,000 people, a little over that per year.
Wow.
And when you're walking through there, the good thing about it is it's a perfect environment. You have 52 degrees Fahrenheit every day of the year. If it's 100 degrees out or 100 below zero, it's still 52 degrees. So the average temperature of this area of the country is 52 degrees, which is why it stays at 52. Once you go below the frost line of the Earth's surface, you're not affected by the temperature anymore. The only thing that really affects you down there is the water. The railings have gotten much better over the years. They've replaced a lot of the old railings, so it's a much nicer walk as you go through with the brickwork. The original pathways, when they first opened up, were gravel. It was kind of hard to walk on. But there was a big hurricane in 1938 that washed all the gravel out, and that's when they had decided to start working on doing brickwork to make it easier to replace if it ever did wash out, and it also made it easier walking up and down through the cavern.
Absolutely. I mean, I have some photos here of, what the caverns look like today.
Those are the new boats.
Yeah, there we go. Finally. I had a question specifically about the lighting in the cave. Why are there different colors? Is that just for aesthetics or is there a purpose to that?
Now that is probably my favorite question you've asked me so far. No, because we get this a lot, because there are a lot of people that go to caverns and they're like, why don't you just use white lights? It makes it so much nicer. The honest reason that we use them is the moss and the algae. So we found out years ago that the white lights and the yellow lights actually make the moss and algae grow faster in the cavern. And the darker lights, so the greens and the blues and the reds, actually kind of stunt that growth, and it won't grow as quickly. So all of the lights in the cavern used to be regular floodlights, but they'd get real hot and they'd burn out very quickly. But they'd also cause the moss and algae to grow very quickly as well. The new lights that we have are LED lights all the way through the cavern. So there's little to no heat at all given off, and the lights last much longer. But also we can take and put white lights and yellow lights to accent certain areas that you really want to show off. And then you can put colored lights in other areas so that you don't get the added growth. And then if you want, you can take them and you can switch them so you don't get too much growth here, you don't get too much growth here. But a lot of people ask that question, why do you have it? Why so many colored lights. Well, that's exactly why it is.
Well, I think it looks like a party in there, so we got two purposes.
Great place.
All right, perfect. Well, I have personally just so many other questions to ask, but you guys do tours there at Howe Caverns, so I mean, if anyone wants to learn more, you can just go on a tour at Howe Caverns. I mean, thank you so much for joining me today, Brian. I really appreciate it. It's so fascinating to just know that these caverns are here for, anyone's leisure.
So before we go, most of our tickets are sold online.
Okay.
The easiest way to get tickets and guarantee yourself a ticket to get on a tour is to go to howecaverns.com and go to the traditional tour, and you can purchase your tickets online. A lot of people travel quite a ways to come here. And if you've followed our social media at all, you've seen that we've had people from all over the world in the last few years coming.
Wow.
But people don't think to get tickets first. And you really should go to our website first. This time of the year, our hours are limited. So we're only open from 10 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. Our busy season is starting to ramp up here in the next couple of months. So the season will be 9 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock at night. We also offer specialty tours like lantern tours, flashlight tours, and of course our signature rock tour, which is the spelunking.
That's so fun. I know you guys have an underground tour coming up as well. So
Yeah.
That sounds fun.
It'd be interesting for sure.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much again, Brian. It was such a pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Kristina.
Of course. And thank you all for joining us for another episode of Upstate Archives. We'll see you next week.